Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all from around the world. Wherever you're joining us today, welcome to our third and final webinar of this series that explores some of the many great features Concord has to offer to support your study of Christian Science. Before we begin, I wanted to take a brief moment to introduce myself and the Concord team for those who may not have attended or watched the recordings of the previous two webinars. My name's Peter, and I'm the Digital Product Manager for Concord. And joining me today, I have our three Concord gurus, Will Adler, Bree Burns, and Kristen Hafford. All of us work for the Office of the Publisher's Agent, which is managed by Jen McLaughlin, who is the Publisher's Agent. It is our responsibility to continue the publication of Mary Baker Eddy's published writings on behalf of the Board of Directors, whether it's translation work or the publishing of physical and digital books. Today's session is specifically focused on lists, why you might want to use lists, and we'll demonstrate some of the functionality we've built into the program to support those use cases. Similar to before, the format of this webinar will consist of 3 demonstrations, but this time lasting a little longer, around 40 minutes in total, followed by a Q&A session, which will take us up to the top of the hour. The first demo will be given by Will, and he will show us how to create and use lists, which covers some of the core functionality for those who are newer to using lists. Next, we'll have Bree talk us through how to create folders, import citations, and print lists. And finally, Kristen will talk us through how to use lists to create readings. The last 2 demonstrations will be aimed more towards those who already have a good working knowledge of lists. For those who do not have a Concord subscription and use the free guest access mode, you will not be able to access or play hymns from the hymnal or save your lists. The demos in this series are primarily geared towards using Concord on a desktop or laptop computer. And so if you're following along on a tablet or mobile phone, some of what you see will be a little different, as will some of the functionality. Throughout the demos, if you think of any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature built into Zoom. Depending on what device you're viewing this webinar on, or what version of Zoom you're using, the way to access this may vary. For example, if you're on a phone or tablet, you may need to tap the screen first to bring up the options menu. Once this comes up, you'll be able to tap on the Q&A icon that should then appear. On a laptop or desktop, the Q&A button can usually be found at the bottom of the screen. And at the end of these demos, we look forward to answering as many of your questions as we can. As with all of these webinars, we are recording them and making them available for you all to rewatch at your convenience. So with that, I'd like to kick it off and hand it across to Will, who will talk us through how to create and use lists. Will.
Thank you so much, Pete. And hello, everyone. Welcome to webinar number 3 here. My name is Will, and I'll be walking us through the first demonstration today. This first demonstration will serve as more of a foundational lesson on using lists. Some of us are newer to lists, others are a little bit more familiar. So demo 1 will just bring everyone up to the same speed, and then demos 2 and 3, which Bree and Kristen will lead, will cover some of the more advanced list features. So I'll start now by sharing my screen. And as I do, I'll just add a little note that if you're viewing this webinar in full screen mode, my video box, so me, my image here, might be in the way of the Concord program. If it's in the way at any time, just feel free to click and hold and drag me out of the way at your convenience. If I'm not in the way at all, then don't worry about it. Sit back and let's enjoy this demo. Here we go. So back to Concord. In Concord, we have 3 main panels. On the left-hand side, we have what's called the Study Tools panel, which is where you search and can view indexes. In the center is the Read panel, where you can read the books and you can view citations in context, And then on the right-hand side is the list panel, where you can create lists, readings, and print out citations. And since this webinar is titled Making Lists in Concord, we're going to spend a lot of time here in this list panel on the right-hand side. So let's dive right into the list panel. And we're going to start in what's called the Lists Manager here. If you're following along at home and you're not seeing the Lists Manager open in your lists panel, that means you're likely looking into one of your lists. To get to this Lists Manager, you can click on this View All Lists icon here towards the top of the Lists panel. Okay, so now once you're at the Lists Manager, we're ready to start and create a list. So to create a new list, what you can do is come to this Create New List button towards the middle of my list panel screen here. And when I click on this, it will bring up a menu prompting me to enter in a list name. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'll call my list a list on direction. And then once I've typed in the name for my list, I can simply hit save. And my list on direction appears and opens up in the list panel. Now, the very fun part of list creation is adding all those wonderful citations into the list. I would say the most popular way to add citations into a list is by going to the search bar over here on the left-hand side of Concord and typing in a word, words, or phrase. Since we're creating a list on direction, I think the phrase lead me would be a nice term to look up. To ensure that the phrase lead me, the search results have the phrase lead me in consecutive order, I'm going to use quotation marks. So I'll open the quotation marks, type in lead me, and then I'll close the quotation marks. And then I can click on this magnifying glass search icon to the right of the search bar to trigger the search. Okay, so we found 23 results. So let's dive into the Bible here and see if we can find some good citations for our list. Looks like all the citations are from Psalms. And let's just say we want to add this first citation here into our list. There's going to be a number of ways that you can add a citation to a list. I'm going to demo a few of them. If at any point you realize that the way I'm adding citations to lists is different than the way you do it, that's okay. We want you to add citations to list in whatever way is the most comfortable to you. So the first way I'll show you is via this three-dot icon here to the right of the citation. So right in the search bar, search results here, I can go to this three-dot icon, which refers directly to the citation. And when I click on it, a menu will appear. And towards the top of this menu, I'll have the option to copy to list. And then I can, since my list on direction is already open here, I can copy it directly into my list on direction. I can also add this citation to other lists that I might have in my list manager, or I can create a new list from scratch. Since we're trying to populate the list on direction, I'll add this citation in here just by clicking. And here you can see Psalms chapter 5, verse 8 was added to my list on direction. Now let's go to this next search result and click on it to view it in context. And sometimes after looking at a citation in context, I might decide, okay, I like verse 5, but I also want to include verse 4. To highlight verse 4, I can click and hold at the beginning of the verse, and then move my mouse towards the end to highlight it. Now notice what we call the citation builder up here changed to include verses 4 and 5. So instead of using this three-dot icon like I used earlier to add the citation to a list, I'm going to use this 9-dot icon here to drag and drop this citation into my list. So as I move my mouse to this 9-dot icon, you'll see this cross-directional icon appear, and that's your cue to click and hold with your mouse, and you can drag the citation into your list. And when you see this green drop zone, that tells you can release your click, and here's the citation right at the bottom of the list. Now let's say we want to add the next citation, Psalms chapter 27. An alternative way to add a citation to a list that isn't this 3-dot menu or the 9-dot menu is you can actually right-click on any highlighted text And when you do that, the same menu that appears with a 3-dot icon will appear when right-clicking. And then I can go to copy to a list, and I'll copy it directly into my list on direction. All right, so we have 3 Bible citations now. Let's add in a hymn. So I'll close the Holy Bible search results here and go right into the Christian Science hymnal. Let's see if we can find a nice hymn that fits this directional theme. How about hymn 466? So just like I added the citation with the 9-dot icon earlier, I'm going to repeat that same action to add this hymn to my list. So I'm going to click and hold on the 9-dot icon and drag it to the bottom of my list and then release. Now we've got a pretty nice list here with a number of citations. And while we're talking about the 9-dot icon, I thought I would show you that there's a whole bunch of 9-dot icons here in the list panel. These 9-dot icons can be used to drag and drop and reorder citations anywhere in the list, just like you would do with the citation builder. So I can click and hold, wait for the green drop zone to appear. And let's say I want to move this hymn to the very top of my list. Go to the top, wait for the green drop zone, and then I can release. If I want to move it back, I can just repeat that action, click and hold, and move it back to the bottom of my list. One of my favorite features within the list panel is expanding my citations, which can be done by clicking this expand icon here. So when I click it, my citations are expanded in the list panel. And if I click it again, my citations are collapsed. So I'll go back to the expanded mode, and we'll dive in a little bit more into our list. So at this point, we've got a pretty nice list going. And let's say we're reading it and we decide we actually want to edit the citations within this list. Say with this first one, Psalms chapter 5, verse 8, I actually want to include verses 8 and 9. So to do that, I can go to the same 3-dot icon here on the right-hand side of the citation. And when I click on this, a new menu will appear. And the first option is to edit the citation. So I'll click on this. And here we go. We have Psalms chapter 5, verses 8. I can just add in a comma and a number 9. I can adjust the citation however I'd like to. And then I can go down here and click save. And if you noticed, now my citation includes verses 8 and 9. So going back to this 3-dot icon, which I'll just note is specific, each one of these 3-dot icons is specific to the citation that you're working with. So I'll go back to it. And the next option is to view a citation in book. So clicking on this will bring up the citation in context in the read panel, which can be very helpful for studying your list. There's also another way to view a citation in the books panel. What you can do is, if you have your citation expanded like we do here, you can simply click on the text of the citation and it will populate in the read panel here. All right, now going back to this 3-dot icon, I want to show you a few more features. You have up here, copy selected. This can be very helpful. I found in my use of Concord to be using. I can copy this citation in a number of different ways. I can copy it in citation form, which is just the citation here. I can copy it in free-flowing format, book format. Both those formats include the text. And then I can also copy a Concord link, which is really awesome for sharing. Say you have a citation you want to share with a friend. You can copy this Concord link here. You can send it to them in an email. They can click on that link. And when they click on the link, it will open them up in Concord and they'll be able to see the citation in the context of the book. There's also a duplicate feature. So clicking on this will do just what it says. It will duplicate the citation. So if I click here on duplicate, it will create another Psalms chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. So I'll demonstrate that. Duplicate. So here at the very bottom of my list, you can see another Psalms 5, verses 8 and 9. And the same one is at the top. So if you ever want to duplicate citations very quickly, you can use this feature. And then to delete a citation, you can go to this three-dot icon again, and then simply choose delete. Awesome. So just to reiterate, whenever you're using these three-dot icons, whether it be here in the list panel, here within the read panel, or here in the study tools panel, these menus are always referencing a specific citation. If you ever want to edit your list as a whole, as a collective, what you'll want to do is go to this 3 horizontal line list options menu here towards the top right-hand side of Concord. So one of the most common questions we get with the Concord team is, I've created a list and I gave it a name or a title, and now I've worked in it, I've added citations, I actually want to change the name of the list. And so to do that, you go to this list options menu here, you click on it, and the very first option is to edit list. And clicking on this will bring up the same menu that appeared when we were creating a new list. And so what we can do is go into this text bar here. We can delete whatever the old name of the list was, and we can type a new one. I'll call it lead me, since that's what we used in the search bar. And then I can click save. And we have the new list title, lead me. It automatically updates. So at this point in the demonstration, before I pass it off to Bree, I'm going to, if you're following along, direct you to go back to the lists manager by clicking this view all list button. And just a little recap on what we've covered. We learned how to create a new list, add citations to that list, and then how to edit those citations. So next, Bree in demonstration number 2 is going to go into a little bit more about some of the advanced list features. So Bree, I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thank you so much, Will. Everyone, I'm Bree and I'm really happy to be here with you today. And in my demo, we're going to focus on 3 different things. First, we're going to look at how to organize lists in your Concord account so that they're easy to find. Then we're going to look at how to import a list of citations that maybe a friend or someone else shared with you into your Concord account so you can save them in a list. And lastly, we'll talk about how to print lists in case you want to save a hard copy of one. So with that, I'll share my screen. And since my demonstration is going to be focused primarily on the list panel, I'm going to close the study tools panel by clicking on this 3-book icon right next to the word study tools. I'm also going to hover my mouse between the lists and read panel, click and then drag that list panel open just a bit wider to give me some more room. So this is my lists manager, which Will was talking about earlier, and you can see all of the lists and folders that I have in my Concord account in my lists manager. And you'll notice there are 2 different types of icons in this lists manager. The first is the list icon, which looks like a small piece of notebook paper. If I were to click on any of these list icons, it would open up the corresponding list. The next icon you can see here is the folder icon, which looks like a small gray square with an arrow next to it. Folders are a way to group related lists together in one place so you can find them quickly and easily. They also help keep your lists manager looking nice and neat. You don't have to use folders, but if you would like to, you can come down to the Create New Folder button at the bottom of the screen and click that to start a new folder. I'll do that now. And I'm going to title this folder Praying for the World. Once I have my title, I'll hit the Save button. And you'll see that my folder has popped up right here. To add a list into this folder, what I'm going to do is hover my mouse over the list I'm interested in until it turns green. Then I'll click and I'll drag that list into my folder. And you'll notice when I start to drag, all of my folders will jump right to the top of my list manager to make them easy to find. So I've just started to drag, and now I'm going to hover this list over my folder, Praying for the World. It will turn green, and when I release, you'll see that that folder goes back to where it was, opens up, And I can tell that my list, Love Thy Neighbor, is inside of this folder, Praying for the World, because the list icon is indented just slightly underneath the title of this folder. If I wanted to close this folder, I could hit the gray arrow right next to it. And to reopen the folder and see that list I've stored in there, I can click that gray arrow one more time. If you have lots of lists and folders and you'd like to be able to quickly expand all of your folders at once, you can hit the expand icon in the top right-hand corner of the list manager, and that will open up all your folders. And clicking it one more time will close them. Now that we've talked about folders, I'd like to talk about another way that you can organize your lists, and that's by rearranging the order that they appear in the Lists Manager. To do this, you'll come over to the three-line menu in the top right of the list panel, click that menu, and you'll see here we have Sort Lists By, and right now there's a check next to Name. What that means is that my lists are sorted alphabetically. If I click Most Recents, the check will move down to Most Recent and my lists will rearrange so that the most recent list or folder I've made is right at the top. I'll do that now so you can see. So I've just rearranged them, and now you can tell Praying for the World, the folder that we just created, is right at the top. There's a third way that you can use to sort your lists in Concord, and that's adding a custom sort. A custom sort allows you to drag your lists and folders into any order that you want, and Concord will remember it. So I'll do that now. I'll click this button, and you'll be able to title this sort. I'm going to call it Favorites because I want to put all my favorite lists and folders right at the top. Then I'll click New Sort, and when I do, you'll see a little pop-up in the center of the screen that says Custom Sort Active. There we go. So I got my pop-up, and now I can drag my lists into any order. So maybe I want to put this list Go To Passages right at the top. So I'm going to click on that and drag it above until the green drop zone is just at the very top. Then I'll release. And maybe I'd also like to put my favorite hymns right at the top. So I'll click on that list and drag it up to the top. Now, if I go back to this three-line menu, I can change between sorting my lists alphabetically by name, by the date that they were created, and also by this favorites sort that I've just created. In this folder, you can also create a new list using this button right here, or create a new folder by using this button right here. Lastly, you can use this menu to find a list that you know you've made, but you can't quite locate which folder it's in. If you know you've made a list, but you can't quite find it, you can click Search for Lists, and then enter in any word that you know was in the title of that list. For example, maybe you remember that the word neighbor is in the title of a list, but you don't know which folder you put it in. When you hit search, Concord will find any list with the word neighbor in it. So you can see here I have two lists with the word neighbor in it, and Concord has highlighted both of those lists in green to make them easy for me to find. Next, I want to talk with you about how to take a list of citations that perhaps a friend or practitioner shared with you and save them to a list in Concord. So to do this, we're going to create a new list by clicking on the plus button right at the top of the list manager. And I'm going to title this list Healing, and we'll click Save. Now that I have my list created, I'm going to go and copy the list of citations that my friend sent me. Mine are in a Google Doc in this tab right at the top of my screen, but you could open up your email or a Word document wherever your citations are. So I'll go to this Google Doc. And you can see here in this Google Doc, I have a few headings as well as some citations. So I'm going to highlight all of these citations and go to the Edit, Copy, in this menu right at the top of Google Docs. And now that my citations have been copied to my computer, I'll head back to Concord by clicking on the Concord logo in the tab at the top of the screen. And then I'll select the Import button. And this Import button will allow you to import all of the citations that you've just copied right into your list. So we'll click this button and this import box appears. And now I'll paste those citations into this box by coming up to the menu at the top of my screen. And I'll go Edit, Paste. And you can see here I have those headings and the citations. From here, I'm going to hit the Validate button. And what the Validate button does is it tells Concord to go through and make sure that all of the text that has been entered into this citation import box is a valid citation. So we'll do that. And Concord will let you know if there's anything that it couldn't read. So for example, Concord recognized all of these as citations, but the headings, it said this citation isn't valid. That's okay, I knew it wasn't supposed to be a citation. I just want it to be free text that's in my list to help divide the citations from one another. So I'll hit Add as Free Text right at the top of this screen. And Concord will turn those headings into their own little comment boxes. Next, I'll hit Import Now, and all of this will go right into the new list I created called Healing. You can see here we have the headings and we have our citations, which I can click on if I want to read in context. Next, if you were interested in printing off this list, have a hard copy of it available to you, you can do that by going to the List Options menu, which Will used when he was changing the title of his list. We'll open up this menu and we'll go to the second option here, Print Preview. When you click on Print Preview, it will open up a screen on the left-hand side of the program where you can view what your list will look like when it's printed. Right now, part of my list is being cut off because I extended my list panel. So all I'm going to do here is simply click on that line in between those two panels and drag the list panel a bit smaller. Now I can see the whole Print Preview page. Concord allows you to change the settings on your printed documents by coming up to this Print Settings gear icon. I'll click on that, and if I click on these arrows to expand the drop-down menus, I can choose if I want to print just the citations, free-flowing format, or maybe I like having the line numbers and marginal headings, so I want to keep it in book format. You can also increase your font size or make it smaller. So maybe I want to do large font. And you can add things like today's date to the page that you print. Once you have all your settings how you'd like them, you can click anywhere outside of this gray menu box and it will close. And then you can select this printer icon right here to send this page to your printer. If you'd rather save it to your computer, you can do that by clicking this Export to PDF button, which will open this list in a new tab as a PDF and allow you to save it right to your computer. So we'll do that now. It will just take a moment to generate. And once it's opened up in the new tab, you can use this little download button right here to save it to your computer, or if you wanted to print it from this screen, you can also use this printer icon in the right-hand corner. When you're all done saving or printing your lists, you can hit the X in this tab at the top here, and you'll be taken right back to Concord. To continue using the program, you can hit the X in the Print Preview box, and the program will open back up again. So you can reopen your Study Tools panel by clicking on that blue icon and continue using Concord. Hopefully this demo was a good reminder of how to organize your lists, how to create folders, how to import a list of citations, and how to print off a list. And with this, I'll turn it over to Kristen to keep showing a few more of List's great features.
Thanks so much, Bree. As Bree said, I'm Kristen, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to use Concord to build readings for your branch Church of Christ Scientists service, or for committee meetings, lectures, associations, or other events where you would want to include readings from the Bible and from Mrs. Eddy's writings. To begin, I just want to clarify that this is going to be about using Concord as a tool to support your creation of readings, but it is not going to be recommending subjects or topics. That inspiration is up to each one of you to just listen for Divine Mind's guidance. This demo will be focused as if I am a reader creating readings for a Wednesday evening service, but the tools and the concepts that I'm going to be presenting should be useful for anyone with doing, personal study. And if you aren't a reader right now, it still will be applicable to using Concord. So the features that we're going to cover today include adding and moving and updating multiple citations at once, tracking the use of the hymnal and using hymns in a service, as well as word count, rearranging citations using print preview, and then we'll briefly touch on revision history. So with that in mind, I will share my screen and we will get started here. So I'm going to start right over here on the left-hand side in our search box. And I've already started on my readings. And so I want to continue to finish them up. And so I'm going to enter a word, the word tender here, into my search box to continue adding to my readings. And I will click on the magnifying glass to get my search results. And I'm going to go into the Bible because I know I have a few more that I would like to add for my readings from the Bible. And I want specifically to look at the verses in Psalms. So I could scroll through and get to Psalms, but one way that I like to do this is to collapse all of the books and then go specifically to Psalms so I can get there a little bit more efficiently. Now you can see that there are 10 passages in Psalms that include this word tender. So in order to add these all at once, I want to include all of them in my list for right now as I'm kind of getting these readings prepped. I could use this little checkbox right here on the right-hand side, and I could put a check in each one of these, and then I could add them all at once. But Concord actually has an even easier way to add all of them at the same time. And here's how you would do this. You can go ahead and click that little box next to the very first one. And then if you scroll to the very last citation that you want to include, hold or press the Shift key on your computer and keep that held down while you click on the very last little box. So I'm going to do that now. So I held my Shift key down while I clicked my mouse. And what happens is that all of the citations now have a checkbox in them, all 10 of them. And that means they're all selected because they're all in blue here. And so now I can choose any one of these 3 dot icons to bring up my menu to find my list. Now you can see I don't see any name of my lists here, which means I don't have any of them open in my list panel. So I am going to select list, choosing this option here, to find the list that I want to add these to. So when I click on that, I get a window that opens in the middle of my Concord, and this shows my folder that has all of my Wednesday readings in it, along with all of the other lists that exist in my account. And so if I click on this arrow, it will take me into that Wednesday readings folder. And here is my existing readings that I've been working on putting together. So if I click on that list, I now get a button that says Add. And what's going to happen when I click on Add is it's not only going to open this list over here in the list panel, but simultaneously it will add all 10 citations from Psalms into this list. So here we go. I'm going to click it and you'll be able to see this happen. So here are my citations from Psalms, and it opened my list. So similarly to what we did over here, where we selected multiple citations in search, we can also do that here in the list panel, because I want to have all of my Psalms, all of my citations from Psalms put up here with my other Bible citations. So we're going to do the same thing that we did over in the study tools panel, where we're going to click in this little square for the first one that we want to select. Then we'll go down and move our mouse to the very last one. But before we click, we have to push that shift button on our keyboard and hold it down, and then click that last citation. And now we have all 10 of those Psalm passages selected. Now I want to move them up here, and I can use the same 9-dot icon as Bree and Will have been showing you today of moving citations around. But when you have multiple selected, you're going to see that it actually kind of does an interesting thing. So when I click and hold and start to move, you'll see it compresses all 10 of those Psalm citations into what looks like just one. But in reality, as you'll see in just a minute, when I release my mouse button, I'm still holding it down right now, you're going to see that all 10 of those citations will have moved. So right now I'm holding it right above this Genesis passage, and I'm going to release it, and you're going to see all 10 of the verses of Psalms show up again. So here we go. So if you move multiple ones, don't worry that you've lost them all. They are still all there. So now I also want to add one more hymn to my readings. So I'm going to go back to my search results here, and I'm going to minimize the Bible, and then I'm going to click on the Christian Science hymnal. And I want to add, for this demo, I think I was looking at hymn number 43. And I would like to talk about this hymn for just a second. So up here at the very top, you can see that there's hymn 43, and then there's also hymn 461. And what this is telling you, that it has these multiple numbers, is that this text for this hymn is not only in the 1932 hymnal as hymn number 43, but it's also in the 2017 hymnal as number 461. So I want to check to see if I've used either version of this hymn in a recent Wednesday service. So I'm going to click over to 461 here, because I see that I have this underlined and a little highlighter icon here in a way that I didn't in hymn 43. So I know I haven't used 43 recently, but what this indicates is that I did use hymn 461 in a service at some point. So how do I know which service I used it in? Well, if I click on that highlighter icon, I can pull up my annotation box here. And that shows me that this citation, this hymn, was used in this list, which is, I always start reading lists with a date, because that makes this really easy to see that the last time I used this hymn was on September 16th in 2020. If you put the date at the end of the list, then you would have to actually click and open this and be able to look and see when it is. So I always put a date right at the beginning of the name of my list. So you don't have to, but it really is helpful for being able to see what or when you last use various hymns. So that feels like I can go ahead and do that, but I'm going to click back over here now to the other version of this particular hymn 43. And then I will highlight all of that hymn, click on the 3-dot menu, and now my list is open. And so I can just click directly on that list, and it will add it right there to the bottom of my list. So now I think I'm ready to do a little bit of modification, updating, and reviewing of my readings and preparing for my Wednesday service. And so I want to start with Psalm 25, and I'm going to open that in the read panel here. And as I'm looking at this one, I realize that I actually have a few other verses that I would like to include with this citation. Now, Concord has a very easy way to update this in your list. And the way to do that is to go ahead and select the additional verses, verse 4 and 5 in this particular case. And then if you click on the 3-dot icon, you'll see there's an additional item that shows up that says Update Existing. And what that means is it's going to take this citation that's showing here in the citation builder that shows verses 4 through 6 for Psalm 25, and it's going to update the existing list item that you had originally clicked on. So let's go ahead and do that now. If I click on that, you can see now this list item shows 25, 4 through 6. Now, if I highlight 3 through 6, because I realize I actually want 3 through 6, and I click on my 3-dot menu, I don't get Update Existing. And that's because you have to initially select and highlight the list item and open that in the Read panel. Then add verse 3 if you want to include that one as well. Then click on your 3-dot menu and once again click Update Existing. So just wanted to go through that twice because it's a little bit, tricky, but it should be really a nice feature to help you in editing. One other feature that's really helpful for readers is to go ahead and have numbering applied for if they are going to mark their books. So we're going to go up to this 3 horizontal list options menu and click on it. And we're going to go into Edit List. And you'll see right under the title of your list, you have this thing called Numbers. And right now it's set to Off. And if I click on Off, then I get a menu with a couple other options. One is to turn numbering on, which then numbers sequentially 1 to 100 or however many citations you have, or you have by book. And we're going to choose that one. And I'm going to go ahead and save it, and then we'll talk about it. So when you turn it on by book, it will number starting at 1 and going through to the end of the Bible, which is James. So it has 13 verses here. And then it starts over with the next book, which in this case is Science and Health. And it numbers 1 through 6. And then again for the hymnal, it starts over again. So that's really helpful for obviously marking your books. And then if you go down here also to the word count feature, which is at the very bottom of the list panel, I'm going to open this up by clicking on this little arrow right in the center of the green bar. And you can see that I have 701 words included in this list of citations. That includes these hymns, but I don't want to count the number of words in my hymns. And so what I can do is click on each number next to my hymns. And you can see that what's happening here is that my hymn has a little circle with a line through it. And when I turn those off, then my word count adjusts to only counting the words that have the numbers applied or active on them. One other thing that's really helpful in editing your readings for a church service is the print preview pane. So I'm going to go up here to my list options menu again, where print preview is. I'm going to click on that and open it. As Bree showed you, it takes up the left half of your screen. And the reason that this can be helpful is that as you move passages around over here in your list on the right-hand side, it will update your print preview pane with the full text on the left-hand side. So let's do that. Let's move Genesis up here above, actually in between the 2 Psalm 119 passages. And when I do that, what happens is I actually get this ability for the Genesis to be now in between these 2 Psalm passages. So you can actually see these changes being made live as you make changes in your list. So if I delete Luke, again, now it goes away from that screen. And the last thing that I just want to show you briefly is if you go back under list options, you also have this revision history option. And if you click on revision history, this will show you changes that you've made in your list. So if you delete a passage or you move something around and then realize you really liked it in the way you had it previously and you wish you knew or could remember what that was, revision history can help you figure out what that looked like previously. And we're going to include a really detailed video for anyone who's interested in revision history as part of the email that we send out at the end of after the webinar. So hopefully these things of adding and moving citations around, tracking the use of hymns, how to rearrange using print preview will be helpful as you move forward in your study, practice, and reading prep for Christian Science services and your personal study. And now we're going to move to actually answering some of the questions. So I'm going to hand it back to Pete.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Well, as always, we've been getting so many really good questions, and so I thought I'll jump straight in. And I've got a few questions for you, Will. The first one is, somebody asks, is there a limit to how many lists you can create?
Yeah, so quick and easy answer to that question is there is no limit.
Great, thank you. And then just a follow-up question. Somebody else asks, when you use the Concord link, can the person you send it to see it even if they do not have Concord? And then just following on from that, is the same true if they're sharing a hymnal verse, for example?
Sure, so if you share a citation with the Concord link and you send it to a friend who does not have Concord, when they click on that link, they'll be directed into Concord and they'll see the same kind of login screen that you see, where there's log in with your credentials if you have them, or if not, on the other side, there's the guest access. So if they don't have Concord, they can just click on guest access. And when they click on that, they'll be able to see the Concord link. In regards to sharing a hymn, if someone shares a hymn and they go in to Concord via that link, they can see the hymn in the search results, but they actually won't be able to see the whole hymn in the read panel like they would a citation. So yes, you can share a hymn, but you need a subscription to see all the words in it.
Awesome, thank you, Owen. Just a couple more for you, if I could. Somebody writes in and asks, after you have chosen a citation and it is highlighted, how can you convince Concord to unselect a portion of it?
Sure, so I'll share my screen. We can definitely convince Concord to do that. All right, I'll click on my Psalm citation here. So I guess first off, if you ever have a citation selected here, it's in green, and you've decided that you actually don't want this citation highlighted at all, what you can do is go up to this X button in the citation builder and click that. And when you do it, it will unselect everything. To convince or to tell Concord to unselect a portion of a selected citation, what they can do is come over here to the left side of the read panel and click on this eraser icon. Then when they go here, they can click on it. And then just like you would highlight, you do that same exact action. Say you wanted to only have verse 8. You didn't want verse 9 highlighted anymore. You can click and drag at the beginning of verse 9, just like you would a highlight, and it will erase and deselect the citation.
Great, thank you so much, Will. Bree, I think we have a few questions for you, if I could. Somebody writes in and says, in the list sort, does it sort by citation date or by date of most recent adjustment to the list?
I'll share my screen here so we can take a look at Concord. So if you open up that 3-line menu and you have most recent selected, what that means is whatever list or folder you were editing the most recently will be right at the top. So for example, right now healing is at the top, but if I went and added a citation to divine love, that list would go to the top. So it's the last time you edited the list, not when you created it.
Thank you. And I think similarly, somebody also writes and says, how can I sort my lists so the folders appear at the top and both folders and lists are in alphabetical orders? I don't think they saw the custom sort in their list managers menu. So perhaps you could just walk us through that one more time.
For sure. So if I was interested in putting my lists in alphabetical order and putting all of the folders at the top, how I would go about that is going to this 3-line menu. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the custom sort that I currently have, which had my favorites at the top. So I'll hit this trash can and I'll get rid of that. It will ask me, am I sure I want to delete? Yes, I do want to delete that because I'd like to do a new one. Next, I'll come here and I'll sort everything by name, which will get my lists in alphabetical order. And not all of my folders are at the top yet. So what I'm going to do is head back to that 3-line menu, say add custom sort. And I'm going to title this one folders at the top. I'll click new sort. And now you can see if I click on this menu, folders at the top has a check next to it, which means I could drag all of my folders to the top here. So I'm going to drag this one up right below church services. Oops, I don't want to drag it into church services. I want to drag it right below church services. There we go. So you can see now my folders here are at the top, followed by my lists. And I can rearrange these folders so that they're in alphabetical order too by just clicking and dragging them.
Great, thank you, Brie. Also, somebody then asks, are there such things as subfolders?
Absolutely. So if you expand one of your folders that you have, you can see that it is possible to create another folder inside of a folder. The easiest way to do that is to come to the 3-dot menu next to the folder you would like to create a subfolder in. And if you click that 3-dot menu, you can see there's a button to add folder. So I'm going to click add folder and I'll title this folder test folder. I'll hit save. And you can see that that test folder is indented just underneath my church services folder. And I can drag any of these lists. For example, I could put followers of Christ. I could click and I could drag that right into my test folder. And you can start to nest folders inside of folders and then put lists in those folders as well.
Thank you. And the same person also asks, how do you number citations?
Perfect. So to do that, I'll just head into one of these lists here. I'll expand this folder and click on one of these. So right now you can see that I don't have any numbers next to these citations, but what I'm going to do is double click on the title of this list, which is another way to essentially do the same thing as hitting edit list from that 3-line menu. So I'll just double click on the title there, and that will open this into edit mode. And then I'm going to take numbering and switch it to either on, which I'll show you here if I hit save. We'll number every single citation in this list, or I could also do it by book, which means that when we get down to science and health, so the first science and health passage, if I did it by book, my numbering would start over. And this first passage from science and health would be 1, the next one 2, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Brie. Kristen, I think we have a few questions for you as well. Somebody writes in and asks, is there a way to insert a citation where you want it to, or must we always drag it from the bottom to where we want it?
So for right now, the only way to insert a citation from like any of the menus, it will automatically default to the bottom unless you use the 9-dot icon, the drag and drop icon, and then you can drag and drop it specifically to where you want it within the list.
Great, thank you. And this person also asked, and I think Will covered it a little bit. They asked, can you explain how to edit a citation so that it stops at a semicolon? So I think we covered being able to sort of edit out a whole verse, but can we do part of a verse? And
Sure. Let me share my screen and we will do exactly that. All right, so if we go into Psalms, and let's say in verse 3, you don't want to have anything after the colon. So let me try that again. You're going to start here. Nope. There we go. So essentially you can get it so that it just has a certain portion of that. And it actually also took one of my words from the first 4 from there. Also, if you were like adding in verse 8, you could just do click and hold right up into that semicolon or wherever you wanted it to stop, and then it will go ahead and stop it there. So you can see now my citation up here at the top actually shows for those 2 verses that it goes until that semicolon. And so I updated that, and that is what will now be in my list. I think I saw a question about, can you do this on an iPad? And on an iPad or on mobile devices, it does actually only select the entire citation within the Bible. So in order to set up something like this, like let's go to citation 4011. What you would need to do is on an iPad, you could edit the citation manually, and you could say to semicolon, just like that. And then you would say save. And then if you click on it, you will see that is how it will, you can limit the amount of the verse that will show up for an iPad.
Great workaround. Thank you so much, Kristen. Somebody also writes in and says, how do I find out if I've used a particular hymn or citation in another list? As a reader, I try not to repeat myself too much.
Sure. So that is what, we're going to go back to our hymn 43 here. So if I go into 461 and if I click right here on this highlighter icon, I can see the list that this hymn was used in. And so if I click on that, it will actually open the list and show me that this hymn was included back on the September of 2020. So anywhere that you see this highlighter icon in the text of the read panel, if you click on it, you can actually access the list that shows up in. And if you, for any reason, don't see this highlighter icon and the underline within the book, you may need to check your settings up here in the right-hand side of your program and go down to My Citations. And if you click on that, make sure that you have Show in Books turned on, because otherwise the Hide in Books makes the highlighter icon as well as the underlining go away. So you just need to make sure that is active.
Great, thank you. And I think we've probably got about time for just one more question. And we've had a few people that have asked this. And Kristen was wondering, people write in and say, how do I access the previous webinars in this series?
That is a great question. Let's show you. So the easiest way to get to the webinars is if you go to concord.christianscience.com. Right here in this box that we have on the homepage, we have been adding the links to the video replays right here, and that will stay up and active for a little while. Once this box goes away, if you would like, you can go on, again, our website and go to the support page, and then go to our help center here. And right here within the Concord Help Center, where we say access the Concord Help Center, you'll actually also be able to get to them right here on this main page of the Concord Help Center. And just one other quick way to get to this is if you actually are in the program, you can click on the help menu, and this top option, read helpful articles, will also take you directly to that main page of our Help Center. So those are the ways that you can find the videos after our webinars today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you. Well, unfortunately, I think that's all the time we've got today for questions, but I just wanted to give a big thanks to Wilbury and Kristen for all of your help here today. If you did ask us a question that we weren't able to get to, we will be in touch via email with an answer. Alternatively, you can email us at any time at concord@csps.com. Just wanted to add, just due to the amount of questions we've been getting since we started this webinar series, it may just take us a little bit longer than usual to get back to you, but rest assured we will reply to all of the questions that we get. Later on today, we'll also be sending out a follow-up email. In this email, you will also find a link to today's recording. And towards the bottom of the email, we'll include useful links to help articles and videos that we think will complement what we've been sharing with you today. On your screen, you should be able to see last week's webinar follow-up email, and highlighted in red is where in the email you'll be able to find this week's resources. Now, as Kristen just showed us as well, for those of you who are not familiar with our Help Center, I'd highly recommend exploring this large library of help articles and videos to support your ongoing learning for this powerful study tool. Again, just to recap, to help access the Help Center article, any Help Center article, click the Help menu towards the top right-hand side of the Concord page, and then you can click Read Helpful Articles, which should be highlighted in red. You'll then be presented with the page which Kristen also showed, where you'll be able to browse our help articles by category, or by typing one or more keywords into the search bar, similarly to Google. And we'll also include a link to this Help Center at the bottom of the follow-up email too. When the email does come through, I'd really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind taking just a few minutes to complete our short survey. As this is a new endeavor for us, we really do want to know how you felt today's webinar went. We've also included a question asking for your feedback about what other topics you would like to see covered in a future webinar. Well, before we go, the last thing I wanted to do is to encourage you all to experiment using Concord. Concord is really meant to be explored and experimented with. And occasionally we do hear from people who are a little nervous to try something new with the program in case they break it. But I wanted to assure you all that this really isn't possible. If you do get stuck or have any questions, we're always so happy to help. And you can feel free to contact us at any time at concord@csps.com. Well, thank you again so much for joining us either for this webinar or for the series. We really hope you've been able to take something away with you to help support your study. We wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.